-1 last night, but I looked at the forecast and it looks like this is the end of it. We're looking at highs of 20s, 25s, 28s further out, and nighttime lows of 5s, 10s, 14s. So we're actually going to get some lows that are the same as our highs over the last few days. So I'm just headed out. So I'm just headed out to move some more hives around. I'm going to be pulling off these mergers just because it's time, and we're going to move forward and progress finally. With these nighttime lows, we can get a little more ambitious and start pushing these colonies ahead. So instead of having to, you know, restrict them and try to hold them back to be able to maintain their integrity through all this cold, we're going to promote space and leap these colonies forward. It's not like we are really doing anything. We're just trying to, what we're going to be doing this next week is just simply trying to keep up to these colonies as they just unfold and start to grow. So for those who are endlessly curious on what I'm doing here, I'm going through a process of merger. I'm taking, so I guess I'll go right from the start. I made a bunch of nukes up last summer, and 5 frames, 6 frames, put them into winter, brought them out of winter. Everything looks in fantastic shape. We've been slapped with this really cold spring, and the 5s are just a little bit smaller, just for a lot of reasons, but mostly because they were built in a 5 frame arrangement, so they just had less space to be able to build out their nest last fall, which is what the whole purpose is around building nukes throughout the summer, is to keep them restricted in a smaller space, not to wear that queen out until you need her for the next season. Get them through a nice decent little cluster and they'll explode the next spring. Well, the 6s made it through all right just because they had a little bit of extra girth in there, but the 5s had just a little bit of trouble because their nest was just a little bit smaller. So through this cold weather, they just weren't able to move forward and progress the same as the rest of the apiary. It's just mostly because of the cold weather, just staggered their development, right? So there's nothing wrong with those little 5s. Those little 5s had terrific little queens in there. They'd, you know, those 5s, I put 2 of them together to cooperate through the honey flow. They built me like 7 boxes of honey on a stack. Just absolutely tremendous. So they're very well proven. When they come out of winter, when we hit this spring, they staggered a little bit, fell back. So what we did is we took those 5s and we put them over top of a strong unit. Okay, like one of those big boxes of bees. We put newspaper or paper towel or whatever over top of that strong unit with the queen excluder, and we put the small little nuke on top of that big unit. And over time, the bees in the strong unit chewed through that paper and very slowly merged with that top unit. So in very effect, I had a queen going in the bottom in that strong unit just chugging along, and then a queen on that top smaller unit that needed a boost. So those bees from the big unit and all the warmth and humidity from that bottom unit went up and kind of boosted that smaller nuke. And those are the nukes I'm stripping off right now. So we gave them 2.5, 3 weeks. I forget my timelines now. But we gave them enough time to be able to allow the merger, to be able to boost that top colony. We left them alone just to, prevent any type of disturbance, to allow the merger of those 2 queen scents. So then in very effect, those 2 queens were operating with the same bees in that colony. We allowed that top unit to establish her nest with the amount of bees that were given, that were allowed from the bottom unit, and got her to a point now where she has capped brood up on top and she's maintaining a nice tight little cluster. We're going through now with the anticipation of nice weather, and we're stripping off those top boxes to be thrown back into the apiary to fill in dead spots or empty spots. As we go around with the second, third call, we make a pretty tough call in some of these colonies, and we leave a bunch of empty spots all over the place. So these merger units are being stripped off right now, thrown onto a bottom board just for transport, and we'll be taking them to yards throughout the apiary just to fill in dead spots. So they've maintained their little nest, they've been taken off, they're operating on their own now. So it's a neat little trick. One thing I really need to stress when doing this type of merger is everybody says merging a weak colony. I don't promote weak colonies. I promote vigor. I promote optimism and anticipated development, growth, potential. Potential is what I'm promoting. I'm not trying to prop up any type of weak stock. You're not doing yourself any good if you're doing that. You just got to be able to look at what's going on and see all the situations that are influencing the apiary, and just try to help. Our job as a beekeeper is just to help manage through some of these tough situations. And that's what we're doing here with those little hives. We're just trying to boost their population threshold up a little bit, just to allow that colony enough bees, enough girth to be able to advance. And now they're good. The girls went through a few days ago on the warmest afternoon we could find. They went down and they spot checked for eggs just to make sure that the top unit was viable. And they were, for the most part. We only lost 1 out of 125 or whatever that was. So the merger worked really well. And you need to understand how this little trick works. You have that big unit on the bottom with the queen, and then we put a smaller unit on top with the queen, right? Merged with excluder and newspaper or some kind of paper. So the big bees, the big nest, chews through the paper and very gradually and slowly moves up and boosts that top box. They'll only give as much bees to that top box as what they can allow to leave that cluster in the bottom. They will always maintain the integrity of the cluster underneath before they give to the colony up top. Especially through these cold conditions, you can really see it. Some of the colonies that I merged, some units are great big and strong, and there's like 2 boxes of bees there. Some units are a little bit smaller, so there's only 4 or 5 frames of bees up top. Just depends on how many bees that bottom cluster is willing to give away to that top one. And you think of those 2 queens working together. Well, they're actually not working together. It's just the bees that are managing together, right? So the organization of that bottom box, you got that cluster, that big bee and the queen, those bees are cycling in that bottom box like this. And then you got that top box up on top, and those bees are cycling like this. So you have 2 separate little colonies going at the same time. And all that's happening is the scent between the 2 queens have merged, and the bees themselves have just, give and take a little bit. So what I'm looking for is that big colony to be able to give a little bit of bees up on top, and that top colony just to gain a little bit of strength, right? The top colony is not providing any benefit to the bottom colony other than just simply providing space for all those extra bees to go. So that's how it works. That's basically the gist of it. The bees will tell you if that queen is good or not by simply killing her off. So if you're trying to do this and the queen dies off up on top, it probably was the fault of that queen. Bees merge very easily, very, very conveniently. As long as they feel good and they're not stressed, they will, as long as you can keep those queens apart with some kind of separation, they will commingle together and work together in an active little colony. It's a really neat trick. I just love doing it. And it just provides just one more tool in that toolbox as we're trying to manage through these tough conditions. I wanted to wait to do this procedure when the temperature started cooperating with us. Like, it's been -9s, -8s, -5s, daytime highs of only 5 or 6, and if we get up to 10 we feel pretty good. That's too cold, so we weren't stripping any of these boxes. We weren't doing any major hive work throughout the cold because it just compromises the integrity of that colony. So last night was -1. I'm looking ahead to +5s, +6s, +10s, +14s of nighttime lows, you know, and then daytime hives of 20s and 25s and even a 28 put in there. So that's provided us the opportunity to, you know, promote and advance the apiary moving forward. I didn't want to do this through that cold weather because it just shocks the integrity of that top unit. The top unit had gained the bees up top, right? And it's established its nest and is probably stretching its brood down to that bottom cluster just because of all those heat dynamics coming up and humidity and everything and the girth of bees. I stripped that top box off. That nest is still stretched down to the bottom of the frame, so they need to make sure that they are able to hold that cluster down over all that work that's been established, so that when I take them off, it doesn't, you know, they don't shrink to the cold and have to abandon some of that brood. That's bad news once that starts to happen, because it just forces a sense of shock and stress on the colony, and that's when you get disease problems and the colony will start falling backwards. So we want to move things forward at all times, moving things forward best we can just to promote that forward movement. So we got to make for damn sure what we're doing here doesn't negatively affect what's going on inside there. So at any rate, I better get back to work because the day is moving on me. It's not waiting for me. So I'm just going through, I'm just going to pick 25 of these off this morning and get them out, spread them out to some of these queenless, or not queenless, but these empty spots within my apiary. Try to get all this, those 24 spread out amongst empty spots. Just going to target a few yards before the crew shows up at 8, and it's supposed to be a nice day. The bees tell you exactly the size of that cluster just by the amount of paper that they removed. Part of that is it's been so cold that they don't stretch themselves out as much. They don't remove all the paper, they just remove what they have to around that cluster, because that paper really annoys them, so they want to get rid of it. But it shows you a very clear, defined cluster through that paper. And I'm pulling off these mergers, and I can almost tell just by looking at that paper how many bees are going to be in the top box. I mean, you get hives like this. Whoops. That's pretty much a box of bees that have been given to the top. You know, more bees promoted up top. Whereas I look at this one, and I'm looking at like 4 or 5 frames. So the amount of bees they were probably going to give to the top is probably a lot less. That's really cool. My continued focus on integrity just keeps reappearing itself. Just look at these clusters. I've just taken the excluder off, so they're just starting to define the top of their cluster again just by closing it off. Just absolutely brilliant. This is why I put so much fuss into these hives, just to promote the nest like this, to go through conditions that we've just experienced, and to keep witnessing bees like this tells me that everything I'm doing is, you know, providing benefit for these colonies. Just makes it feel like I'm actually managing these bees instead of just throwing boxes. I'm actually tapping into the spirit of these colonies and managing them through some tough situations. It's really, really fun.